Hey, welcome back. My name's Zach Hampson. Today's podcast, we're going to answer a bunch of the internet's questions, and I think they're going to be very, 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 very interesting. Stick around. So, first question right off the bat. Now, these questions come from a philosophical sort of page where they sort of pose philosophical orientated questions to people. And I found it really interesting. A couple of them really stood out for me, and I screenshotted those, and I thought, yeah, wow, those are very thought provoking. I thought maybe we could go through those today together, and perhaps you can think about these things yourself. I mean, there's a couple of them in total, and let's just get stuck into them. So, look, the first one that I saw pop up was, why do people fear losing things that they do not even have yet? I thought that was so interesting. I thought, why do people fear losing things? Okay, yeah, all right, why do we fear losing things, but that they do not even have yet? I was like, wow, okay, do not even have yet. And so I was thinking, what are some aspects in my life where I've done that myself, fear losing things that I do not even have yet. And I think it's that old quote, right? We suffer more in imagination than we do in reality, right? Marcus Aurelius, right? And it's that suffering in imagination that I think really burns us to the core, that oftentimes things that we don't even possess yet, we'll start to fantasize and we start to imagine, we start to play out scenarios, and we start to think about, oh, what ifs and could haves and could be's and possibilities. And then, we naturally go towards, but what if things don't work out that way? Or what if I fear about that? What do we fear about that? I think it's along the same lines, right? We often fear, these imaginings, these possibilities may or may not happen, more so than the real thing. And if you were just to really look at the things that are in front of you, 9 times out of 10, it's probably not going to be that hard, right? But why do we fear those things? Why do we fear losing things that we do not even have yet? I think because it stems from a sort of insecurity of that we can't trust ourselves to safeguard the things that we might have in the future because we're looking in the past. I'm guilty of that too. I sort of look at the past and I sort of think that I can predict the future based on my past circumstances, when that is just every time I tried to do that, it's worked out differently, or it's stopped me from progressing forward, and it's actually hindered me a lot, and it's hurt me a lot. Different situations would arise in life, different circumstances. Maybe it was a job opportunity. Maybe it's an opportunity to step out on my own, which I've done many times in my life. I've taken jumps many times in my life. And when you take risks and you take jumps in your life, you tend to be, if you take risks and you take jumps in life and they fail, like so many things do, because that's just life, they do, you tend to sort of use that as a lens for the future. And I've been a victim of that. So I think we tend to fear things that we don't even have yet simply because we're viewing the future in the lens of the past. And viewing the future in the lens of the past is just a great way to go nowhere. Because the future is not the past. Your present is not the past. There is only one time, and there's only now. And now is ever changing. Maybe we just really get caught up in thinking too much about different sayings, different things, different beings. Yeah, whatever. But yeah, I think that's it, really, is that you're viewing the future in the lens of the past. The next question is it possible to have a completely unbiased perspective, or are we always influenced by our experiences? I think we're always influenced by our experiences. There's not a single person that's unbiased. There was these studies done in the US of A on different judges, and their temperaments, especially when it came to handing out verdicts. What they found was very interesting. I don't know what the study's called, but what they found was very interesting was that judges would tended to be more lenient in the verdicts that they would hand out if they had eaten. So if they went and had lunch and they came back, they tended, I don't remember the stats, but they did tend to be more lenient in the verdicts that they handed out. I think we're completely incapable of escaping our biases as it relates to our point of view in life. We cannot escape them. We can try, and I think the perfect man employs his mind like a mirror, holds nothing, takes nothing, reflects but does not take in, right? That whole Zen Buddhist type of saying, or Taoist saying, whichever one it was. And I think there are ideals to hold and strive towards, and I think with careful practice and consideration, you can alleviate some of your biases. However, I don't believe you're capable of alleviating all, because our perspective is what makes up our viewpoint of the world. It's how we interpret the world. We can only interpret the world through our own perspectives. It's like what I was just talking about before. You typically interpret the future through the lens of your past. It's not a good way to do it, but it is a typical way of which we do it. Now, I do believe with a lot of practice, a lot of being conscious of the way that you speak, of the way that you talk, the way that we look at things, the way that we absorb in things, you can get a sort of gut feeling build up, intuition build up, strengthen that muscle of intuition so much so that when these things arise, you know that feeling within you. It's like, oh, hang on, I can feel my perspective taking over here. I'm reading into this. I'm putting onto this. I'm, mirroring this. I'm putting my own spin on this that there isn't. And I'm just doing that. So no, I don't think we can ever escape it, but we can do very well to get rid of it. Does our perspective create the world, or does the world shape our perspective? Very similar one to the last one, hey? Does our perspective shape the world, or does our perspective create the world, or does the world shape our perspective? I think both. Firstly, when you come into this world, the world is going to be shaping your perspective. And I think there's nothing you can really do about that. But there comes a time when you age and you grow, and you realize that I do not need to look at the world in ways I have brought up to look at it. I don't need to look at it the ways I've been raised to look at it. And you can grow past that. I've employed this so many times in my own life, is that you can really genuinely choose how to look at things. There was a great example is that, actually I got a handful of great examples. One of them was, there used to be this girl that we would work with, and for whatever reason, nobody really liked her. I can't remember. She was deemed very, very annoying. Everybody dreaded working with her, and all these sorts of things like that. I can't even remember what it was, so long ago. And it was at a retail store. And, when I would go to work and I'd see her rostered on with me, I'd be like, oh no, it's going to be another terrible day. I'm going to really not enjoy this day. I just wish she'd quit. Or I wish she'd go away. I wish I'd rostered on with anybody else but her. She's always so annoying. She blah, 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 blah. All these sorts of things that I had in my mind. Until one day I saw that she was rostered on the next day. I thought, why don't I just come in and I think, let's just look for things that we have in common. Why don't I just think, I actually do enjoy working with her. Let's just think that and let's go in. Long and behold, I actually found that I really enjoyed working with her on shifts. I found a lot of things in common. I found a lot of things. I won't go into details just in case she ever watches this. But I found a lot of things in common. I found a lot of things that I enjoyed talking about with her. Found out that we shared a lot of similar perspectives when it came to life, philosophies, government, all these sorts of things like that. And I thought, wow, I never knew this about you. I never knew this about who you were or what you liked or what you were interested in. We really share a lot of similarities. That's fantastic. But it was only because I changed my perspective coming into it, right? I think it's both true. Does our perspective create the world, or does the world shape our perspective? I think it's both true. I think the world is what it is, and you can allow that to influence you, however right or wrong or true or false that might be, because the way that you look at it may or may not be true. It might present itself in a myriad of different facets, and one of them might not necessarily be the be all end all facet. That's why your perspective is so important, because you get to choose how you look at the object. You know, if you look at a rectangle, a block of rectangle, a perfectly white rectangle, and you put it up, stand it on its long side going up, going vertically, and you look at it from the corner, it can very well look like a cone. It really can look like a cylinder, and it really does look like a cylinder, you know. But if you shift your perspective a little bit, all of a sudden, wow, back to a rectangle again. And the same is true for life. There is certain circumstances which will arise in your life, and what you always have control over, and what you always have control over to create the world that you want to, is the perspective that you hold on things. What's that quote where it's like, 10% of the world is what happens to you, 90% of it is how you choose to respond, right? And that's true. I think that quite answers that one. We've got a few to get through. Would you rather live in a world shaped by your dreams, or unravel the mysteries of a reality beyond imagination? Would you rather live in a world shaped by your dreams, or unravel the mysteries of the world beyond your imaginations? So, live in a world of your own design, or live by surprise in a world that you haven't created. I would always opt for the world beyond my imagination. Always. Although, we do in some ways already live in a world that is shaped by our own dreams, if our dreams are strong enough. And if we are strong enough, we can shape the world to our dreams. We can manifest that, and we can change the world to those. I strongly believe that, because I've proven it time and time again. And I've seen other people that have done it too. However, I would rather, and we live in a world that is beyond our imagination. And I would always opt for a world beyond my imagination, because it comes back to the dreamer analogy, right? By Alan Watts. We're all probably familiar with this, is that, if you can dream any dream when you go to sleep and live a whole lifetime in that one dream, what would you dream? And so you dream, you go to sleep at night, and you can live a whole lifetime in one sleep, 80 years and one night. You dream, you could do anything you possibly can. You're essentially God, and you create worlds, you create stars, and you blow them up, and you expand them, and you stop time, speed up time, and create organisms, and build life, and destroy life, and whatever it is you can imagine, you could do it. And you do that for many, many, many nights, maybe do it for a week. You've lived like several lifetimes in the span of a week. Eventually you get pretty bored, and you think, what about, it'd be more exciting if I have limitations on myself, right? And so you slowly implement limitations on yourself. You're like, what if I can get hurt? What if I could die? What if I forget I'm the dreamer? And eventually you implement so many limitations on yourself until you find yourself exactly where you are right now, here, with me, watching this video, listening to this video, in a world beyond your imagination, because you don't know what's next. And that's what's exciting about it all. So yeah, I'd always opt for a world beyond my imagination. Should the pursuit of personal happiness always be prioritized, even if it means compromise societal values? This one was an interesting one. It's a bit of a tricky one, right? Should the pursuit of personal happiness always be prioritized, even if it means compromise societal values? So, personal happiness, what does that mean? Are we just talking fulfillment, or are we just talking just sub-level happiness? Since the word happiness was used, I'm going to say it's just your general run-of-the-mill arcade happiness. There you go. So if it's just your general run-of-the-mill arcade happiness, then I don't think it's equivalent to joy. Joy, I think, is much more fulfilling in a deeper sense, and it comes with it a lot of gratitude and a lot of thankfulness and a lot of fulfillment. Just simple happiness, I don't think is very fulfilling, simply because not only through my own experiences in life, but the stories shared with me from many other people from around the world. I don't think it's fulfilling. So, should the pursuit of personal happiness be prioritized, even if it means compromise social values? What do we mean by societal values, right? Are we doing things that are a bit risque? Are we doing things deemed a bit outside of the norms? Or are we doing things that are totally breaking and contradictory to the societal values? Now, you've got to stop and think. Societal values are there for a reason. They've been built up over time for a purpose, to safeguard yourself, others, society at large. Now, I don't believe the individual is for society. I think society lives for the individual. Now, that's a whole nother can of worms to talk about, but I don't think it's worth sacrificing societal values for your own personal, immediate gratification. What I mean by that is that you really don't know what you're really sacrificing at the end of the day. You think you do, but you don't. Because when you play it out, what you're going to find is a myriad of different things that are just going to start. It's like a hydra. You really don't know what head's going to come out next, because there's always a give and take. And somewhere along the lines, over thousands of years, we all collectively said, yeah, we probably shouldn't fucking do that. That's probably not a good fucking idea. We probably shouldn't let people just, get away with murder or rape or, incest or, these extremes. But even in the short term things, right? Like, we probably shouldn't let people just, we should probably have some sort of sense of shame and decorum in this society. And when there's no sense of shame, there's no sense of honor. When there's no sense of values, there's no sense of things to be valued. So it's a big risk. So no, I don't think so. But in safeguarding time, perhaps we can extrapolate that question further on a separate podcast. If you're interested, let me know in the comments. Can true understanding be found in simplicity, or does complexity reveal the hidden nuances of existence? Can true understanding be found in simplicity, or does complexity reveal the hidden nuances of our existence? I think that when you really play things out, they tend to be a lot more simpler than complex. I think it tends to be simply us that implement a sense of complexity to things, when in reality things are a lot simpler than we deem them to be. Simply because you can break things down into terms and different sort of proportions and different definitions and different mechanisms and different atoms and different physics and mathematics, doesn't necessarily mean that things are that complex just because you can break it down in that way. I mean, when I paint a painting, sure, I can talk about the way in which I paint a painting. Sure, I can break down exactly what it means to do this particular stroke or this particular line or this particular shade, this particular color. I can go about the way that I move my brush, the way I set up my canvas, the way I chose this particular subject, the way I primed this canvas, the way I did these things like that. But in simplicity, and what I find to be to reveal more about itself is in the simplicity, is to be like, I know that I chose these things out of the fact that that's what I dance with. That's what I enjoy most. That's what I think works the best. Simply because of time, understanding, repetition, all these sorts of things that come play along with it. But I think the simplicity, so, reveals hidden nuances in our existence. Complexity may help you understand or take you to the point, but it's always going to be simplicity that's going to reveal those things to you. There's a lot to be learnt in, instead of taking multiple steps, multiple brush strokes to paint a hand, there's something more profound in doing it in one. Because if you can learn to do it in one, that's revealed itself so much more. Because when it takes 10 steps to paint a hand, the hand looks complex, looks, intriguing. Maybe you've done some stuff like that. But there's a sense that the audience loses some of its own creative nuances. And there's also a sense that you were safeguarding it a little bit. You were too hesitant with it. You were too precious with it. But when you can learn to replace the 10 brush strokes for the one, the hand that you've just painted becomes so much more than just a hand. Because when you get close to it, you're like, whoa, that's not a hand. But if you step away from it, you're kind of like, wow, now that looks more real to me than a hand that was painted in 10 strokes. Something to be said about that. Would you value brutal honesty even if it meant facing uncomfortable truths? Absolutely, all the time. I think this is a quick one, easy one, is that brutal honesty and honesty in truths is what propels us forward in life. Being uncomfortable, having anxiety is always a marker for growth. It's always a marker for the next step, the next thing. It's always a marker of becoming more, of growth. Again, being uncomfortable, having anxiety, being told truths. I think a man is only as valuable as how much truth he can hold. About himself, particularly. Not so much about the world, but about himself. If you can stomach all the truth you possibly can about the criticisms and the nuances about yourself, then you can really, really make something of yourself. There's a lot of growth to be had in that. Would you rather always speak the truth but hurt people's feelings, or tell comforting lies to keep everyone happy? Similar to that last one, but I thought it was interesting because sometimes there requires an act of delicacy in speaking comforting lies to somebody for a broader purpose, a bigger plan. I can understand that. There's always a need for that. And if you don't believe there's a need for that, I'd challenge you on that. But there is always, truth but hurts people's feelings. And look, I can understand a comforting lie. I can understand the need for those sorts of things. And I believe perhaps in getting what you want out of life, perhaps there is a need to do those sorts of acts and put those out there. But it would be much better to be hated for what you are than to be loved for what you're not. So, tell truths. no matter if they hurt people. What defines a person? Their actions or their thoughts? I think the knee-jerk response is their actions, right? Because your thoughts aren't manifested into anything real. However, if somebody admits to you that they're maybe pedophilic in nature, or but they haven't acted on it, that's now defined them, right? Whether or not they've acted on it or not, they've thought about it, and that's their deepest thoughts they've revealed to you. So in a lot of ways, your thoughts are in correlation to actions. They are very similar to actions, whether or not they have a physical manifestation or not. Perhaps you'd argue the sharing of information is a physical manifestation of that, because it's words. You've imparted knowledge onto somebody else, whether it's good or bad, right? So, and I believe that your thoughts dictate your reality as well. Again, going back to perspective, how you think about the world, how you think about yourself, how you think about things that arise in the world, how you think about a whole myriad of things. So that definitely defines you. But to others, perhaps your actions define you more so, right? If they can't hear your thoughts and if you don't share them, then it's always going to be your actions that define you the most. That's unquestionable. Personally, your thoughts define you the most, and then your actions solidify those thoughts. Externally, your actions, I would say it's both. Sounds like a bit of a cop-out answer. But I would say it's both. Both define you. If you could alter one event from your past, would you risk changing who you are today? No, I would never do it. Never. Even if it was a life-altering event, something that was drastic, or, I personally can't think of any events in my life that I would go back and change. Perhaps you can think of some yourself. I don't know. But I personally would never sacrifice who I am now for anything. Simply because you don't know what your trade-offs are. If you go back and change those things, if you got rid of those things, you really don't know how different your life would be having not gone through those things. And I would never risk that. I love where I'm at in life right now. I love everything about my life. Perhaps if I was unhappy with my life, you might consider going back in time. But even then, I would urge you to reconsider, because your unhappiness is, in a lot of ways, a bit of a blessing, because it's fuel, it's motivation, it's a sign of change. If you want it to be, again, perspective. So no, I wouldn't necessarily go back and change that myself. Is it better to love and lose, or never to love? Is it better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all? Similar question, right? Is it better to love and lost than never to have loved at all? Depends how much love you have lost. Depends how much love you've lost, I think. I mean, there would certainly be cases of how much love you've lost that you'd really have wished you never have loved at all. However, it's in the very fact of loving and the possibility of loss that makes it so beautiful, makes it so valuable, so precious. I think of myself, I think of my beautiful fiance, I think of my beautiful daughter, how much I love them, how much they love me, how much I care for them, how precious they are to me. And I think how easily they could be taken from me. Whether car accident, freak of nature, whatever it might be. I don't wake up tomorrow morning. It can all be gone so quickly. I would never trade that. I think it's always better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. Because when you've loved and you've lost, then you know the value of love. Then you've experienced, you've lived, you've laughed, you've cried, you've wept. You've lived to be human. If you've never loved at all, perhaps you haven't lived at all. Would you kill one person you love to save 100 strangers? No, I wouldn't. And this is controversial, I suppose. All for one, one for all, right? That type of saying. But no, I think this is probably going to be one of my most controversial takes. Is that no, I wouldn't sacrifice one person that I love to save 100 people. I wouldn't do it. Wouldn't do it. Perhaps that makes me a villain. I don't know. But I don't believe in sacrificing the many sacrificing the few for the many. I believe that's a childlike view of the world. I really do believe it's a childlike view of the world. Because you're saying that life only becomes more valuable if there is more of it. When I say to you that life is valuable, full stop. That's it. Now, it is a travesty that 100 people would die for one, and you would look at that as some sort of value weight system, perhaps. How many good can 100 people do versus one person? But I don't think it's to be taken that way. I don't think life is this give and take, value added type of thing, necessarily. I don't think that at all. So no, I wouldn't. Should people care more about doing the right thing or doing things right? What's the difference? Should people care more about doing the right thing or doing things right? 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 Which one should you care more about? Perhaps, what is the right thing? And what is doing something right? I think that implies a sense that you've got it all figured out and you know what's right or wrong and what's best. It's a lot of arrogance, a lot of pride in there. I would strive to do what you know is right more than doing things right. Oh, no. No. There's less pride in doing things right than there is in what you think to do is right. So I would do things right. Strive to do things right than doing the right thing. I think strive to do things right rather than do the right thing. Because if you think you know what the right thing is to do, you're either delusional, prideful, or just a combination of the two. But if you strive to do things right, so to put your best foot forward, then that's really just you just trying to do the best you can. So yeah, do things right. Huh. That's the last question. Perhaps a good question to end on. Strive to do things right rather than to do the right thing. Because you never know what the right thing is. However, in whatever given circumstance that might arise in your life, strive to do the right thing. Yeah. Thank you for listening. Appreciate your time.